Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this Saturday afternoon for our session and to hear our faculties speak about, to hear from our faculties directly. Okay, later on, if you have any questions, please do use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. So please allow me to introduce our speakers today. Firstly, it will be Prof. Loy Hui Jie. He's the Vice Dean of NUS College and also the Associate Professor for Philosophy at NUS Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. And also joining us today will be Dr. Bart van Wassenhove. He's a lecturer at NUS College. Dr. Leong Wing Si, Senior Lecturer at NUS College, as well as Dr. Ang Yu Chen, who is our lecturer and also our museum officer at the Lee Kong Chian Natural History Museum at NUS. So I will now hand the time over to Prof. Loy. Prof. Loy, over to you.
Hi, are we being heard? Does it look okay, guys? Well, good to see everyone. I hope that you guys are able to hear and see us clearly. So today is a very special session. We are really here just to introduce ourselves and give you a sense of the kinds of professors we have in the college. And I'm just going to ask my colleagues here to say a little bit about themselves. So you heard us be introduced, but maybe tell us like where you're from and what do you teach here. Maybe even one fun fact yourself. Bart, you want to go first?
Sure. My name is Bart van Wassenhove. I'm originally from Belgium. I've been in Singapore about 6 years now. So I'm a classicist by training. I study first century CE, Latin literature and philosophy, and I'm here to represent the global narratives part of the curriculum because I'm the coordinator of that segment of our core curriculum. And a fun fact about me, I went diving for the first time recently, and that was a lot of fun.
Oh my goodness. You okay?
I'm fine.
Wing, go ahead. Yeah.
Hi everyone, nice meeting you. My name is Wing. I got my PhD from Chicago in comparative literature. And here at NUSC, I teach and coordinate the writing class, and I also will be involved in the impact experience module. Fun fact about myself, I have 2 cats, and I really like watch them fighting one another.
Oh boy. Okay, Yishen, you're next.
Hi, so I'm Yishen. So actually, I was from the previously USP, which is now NUSC. I was one of the alumni. So now I'm back here teaching, and I represent one of the many adjunct lecturers who are teaching in NUSC.
I think the technical term for you is joint appointment.
Sorry, joint appointment. Yes, sorry, joint appointment holders. Yeah. So as a biologist, I actually an entomologist, so I study insects. So I'm actually teaching this module called Biodiversity and Natural History in Singapore. So I aim to turn students into budding naturalists and biologists. Fun fact is I just came back from a very tiring field trip with a lot of students at St. John's Island. Yeah.
Did we pay for that?
Oh, yeah, we did.
You know what I heard? You said budding entomologists. I almost heard budding.
They are all out catching insects around.
So I'm Prof. Loy. I actually went to school in the US. I received my bachelor's from here in philosophy. And then later on, I went on to do my PhD in philosophy from Berkeley. I'm not actually teaching in NUS College right now. I'm busy doing other teaching somewhere else in the campus, but I'm one of the vice deans here. I'm in charge of the academic program, all the, as we said this morning, all the nerdy stuff. Unfortunately, you have to go back to me. Right? Yes. I'm also one of the residential masters here. So fantastic. So you've all introduced yourself already. You all represent different aspects of our curriculum. But you mentioned that you are teaching and coordinating global narratives, and you're with writing. You are with you're teaching one of the science courses here, right? Maybe you want to just take a couple of sentences just to introduce those pillars that you represent. Just give a sense, just give the students, the audience a sense of what kinds of things are we teaching them or we're doing with them in those classrooms. Bart, you want to go first?
Sure. So global narratives is a core module, right? One of our core modules that most the incoming first and second year students, mostly first years, will take. And so the aim of the course is to introduce students to enduring works of the human imagination across different genres. And this ranges from poetry to short stories, philosophical narratives, drama, and even film and other moving image media, right? So it's a very broad range of genres, and we also aim to present a wide range of global traditions, and because it's a literature and art course, but we try not to be insular. We try to be as broad as possible in our scope and give the students the skills to engage with all these different texts from different parts of the world in different types of genres. And so it's a pretty broad scope. It's a lot of things to do in 13 weeks, but so far I'm having a lot of fun with it.
I heard that there is French medieval poetry and Korean drama in your class.
There is,
right?
yes. So those are the front end and back end. So it gives you a sense of the range, right? Because we try to play to our faculty's interests and strengths as well, right? I mean, we have a medievalist, and so why not have that person do what they're best at, right? And then we have someone who's currently working on Korean drama, and so that all works, right? Because we're not aiming to cover all of world literature. I mean, that's just impossible in 13 weeks. But what we're trying to do is give students a good slice of the various different kind of narrative productions out there.
I'm going to come back to you later and ask you how the science students are doing.
Sure.
Right? Wing, you want to say something about the courses you represent?
Okay, so I represent the thinking with writing class. Basically, this is a class which develops students their writing skills, their academic argumentative skills. And what we do is to adopt a topic-focused approach to explore an interdisciplinary question. So we, among our colleagues, we do a lot of things. We cover topics like the role of education, the concept of global citizenship, philosophy of the mind, science fiction, and so on and so forth. And with this topic-based approach, we try to develop our ability in making academic arguments. We also develop this process-oriented approach in which we ask students to draft the essay and redraft the essay actually quite a number of times. And we believe that in this process, students will be able to develop not only academic writing skills, but also what we think of as very important, their meta-awareness about their skills.
Yeah, just to be clear, every writing class is one topic. It's not as if students will be doing like five of these topics.
Yes.
Ishan, what about you? What is your class about?
So represent, I guess, that pillar called making connections.
Yes.
And so as a science-backed, science-based module, so I'm actually making connections. So it's not just, I think when you're at university level, whatever kind of knowledge you can actually learn by yourself. So I think it's up to us in this college to help facilitate how you can actually learn, the skills that you can bring into the world. So, for example, I have a lot of in my module as a science module, I have a lot of art students who actually do very well because I focus a lot on, I would say, like very observation-based skills, which any kind of either science or non-science student will be able to take on.
Yeah, but it is still a science module, right? Just
it is
sure I know what I'm paying for.
Yeah, it is still a very science module. But also I like to add in a lot of other connecting to other disciplines as well. There's conservation, there's a lot of social issues. I like to throw in a lot of art as well. I make them write poetry as well. So maybe I can consult you on that. So.
Yeah. We just approved, we're just looking at a module proposal recently. This is from a mathematician. She wants to propose something that has to do with perspective drawing and its connection and its history with geometry. This is really interesting. Okay, so maybe let's come back to Bart.
Sure.
So how are the science students doing in your class?
I think they're doing great. I mean, it's a common myth that you have to have a background in literature to succeed in a mostly literature course like this, but I'm not really seeing that. What I'm seeing is that students who come in with an open mind and who are willing to kind of build that confidence, even if they don't identify as literature people, right? That those students do well, right? And I mean, in my first class, I had an activity where I showed the poem on the screen, and I had this activity I call Explode the Poem, right? So basically, students write a comment on one line of the poem, and then I read the poem again, and students just interject their comments. And I got a lot of insightful comments from students of all different majors. And so by the end, I mean, this was a sort of secret confidence boosting activity. By the end of the activity, I said, okay, so now you're aware that you're all literary critics. I mean, you can all do this, right? I mean, everyone had an observation to share that was interesting. And that was about a specific feature of this one poem. right?
And of course, the reverse is just as important as well, right? So not only do we care to make sure that our science students can, not only can, but they're going to learn a lot from our, shall we say, roughly more humanities-based courses. But likewise, we also want our art students to benefit from the science classes that we host here, or the computational classes, right? All our students are going to be doing some kind of computational class as well. And I think we just approved that as well. Nikhil was one who put forward that recently. Yeah. What about your classes, the classes that you represent? What about how are the writing instructors dealing with the heterogeneity, the kind of diversity of students that they are teaching?
I think different students bring into the classroom their different backgrounds, and it's very important that they actually bring in their own backgrounds and specialties into the classroom. Engineering students may not have a lot of experience in writing, that is true. However, they also bring into the classroom their engineering mindset. And for a writing class, that works very well because there is something very scientific, very logical, very systematic about writing. So science students, even if they may not have a lot of background in writing, they actually can do very well.
Or you already started saying something about that?
Yeah, actually, just as an example, I had two students who in the module itself, they did a project, and one of them was I think literature, and another one social sciences. Their project on entomology, observations of entomology in the Cinnamon College itself, actually was selected to. They actually went to Berlin for an international student presentation. So they presented a very sciencey project with the lens of their arts lens there, and I think it was actually absolutely wonderful. A lot of people actually were going to ask them about it.
Yeah, I'm really happy to hear that because this is very much part of what we're trying to achieve in NUS College. We want our students to have this kind of interdisciplinary exposure and mindset that we want them to be comfortable across all these different boundaries, to break down all these boundaries that we assume, just because you come from an arts background, therefore you can't do math and science, and vice versa. And that's just not even. We're not seeing that actually. Yeah. I'm gonna ask you. Okay, so what do you make your students do in your module? But you actually kind of said one, but maybe I'm going to pressure you to say another. Sure. One less obvious thing that takes place in your classroom.
Something less obvious. I mean, one thing that we do in class is we actually have students do a bit of creative writing. I mean, have no fear. I mean, we're not asking you to write a novel or something by the end of the semester, but small activities where we do a little bit of writing to get into the mindset of an author or a creator, right? So for example, one thing I've done in my class is to ask students to rewrite the ending of the story and then think about sort of how could a story work towards that ending? How does the different ending completely change the picture? Or we have students translate poetry into prose, for example, right? I mean, try to turn poetry into prose and then talk about what was gained and lost in that process, right? So I think, I mean, it's a great way to get into the spirit of literature, to see what kind of challenges is a writer dealing with and why do they make the choices they're making. So I think that gives students a lot of fresh insight just by doing it, right? I mean, which kind of fits with our focus in NUS College and experiential learning, right? I mean, it's not just learning about literature, it's learning to get into the mindset of someone who actually writes literature.
Yes, and obviously the point of this is not even to turn our people into literature majors or even minors, right? It's to really give all of them a bit of that mindset, that open-mindedness, that kind of skill set to be able to handle a variety of human expressions, perhaps even from across time and space, different kinds of cultures. And that's going to be a very useful kind of upskilling that you can have, just as someone who aspires to be an active citizen, shall we say, right? What about you? What weird and interesting things have you been doing with the students in the classroom?
We ask students to do a lot of things. Among them, three are particularly important. Number one, we ask students to read academic articles. We develop their abilities to read academic articles to discern what is a good argument. Number two, we also require them to develop basic argumentative skills, and which that they do in terms of practicing writing, practicing claim formulation, practicing providing reasons for their argument. Now, thirdly, and the most important aim in my view, we develop students' ability to develop their own research project. And in that process, students actually have to articulate a problem and then further develop a research question and develop a project that they can make use of to address the research question. I see I have said that the last aim is the most important because it will help students develop their intellectual autonomy in the most personal sense. They develop their own voice. And I hope that if you do join our classes in future, you do enjoy this process.
Anything surprising that you do?
Surprising.
Not so obvious to, not as predictable to people coming from pre-university.
Yeah. Students always tended to think that they had to compete with one another. But I don't think that's always true, and I don't think that necessarily have to be true. It works very well in a writing class if we think of one another as our buddies, as our intellectual friends. So I ask them to help one another out a lot. So in the process when they are developing their research projects, they have to give one another comments, constructive comments, and I do think that in the process, they will develop intellectual friendship that can last a lifetime.
Fantastic. Yishan, what about you? Oh, something interesting.
Maybe this acts as a stinger to my sample class next Saturday. So usually in the first class, when I say science module, you think it's all going to be like very inaccessible, a lot of like logic and stuff like that. Then the first thing I tell them is, okay, let's go out there, sit on the grass, touch the grass, and I want you to start. And I guide them through a little bit of like a guided meditation and then actually ask them about their own direct experiences. How do you feel? Do you think that was an ant crawling up you, or was it just actually, I don't close your eyes and I just like took a stick and just so they thought, hey, maybe it's an insect, but actually it wasn't. It's like, so this is just actually, you're putting a lot of different kind of perceptions onto what's actually happening, which is just actually some physical sensations there. So that's as a way to let them realize that in a way, experiential learning is very important because you need to go through it in order to understand what it is. I can tell you how a kiwi tastes like, but you won't understand it. You have to taste it yourself. So in my model, I really focus a lot on that.
What do you guys do in St. John's, by the way, since you mentioned it?
Oh, we did a lot. We did night walk. We were going around catching a lot of insects because that's part of the. I'm an entomologist, so of course they are going to have to catch a lot of insects. And we went to the intertidal zone. We saw a lot of really weird, crazy things. I was amazed by the amount of stuff that was out there.
Fantastic. Yeah. Now I'm really feeling slightly envious. Now I want to see your classes. Yeah.
Oh, can I add something about the insect bit? Now, I'm not a natural scientist, but I noticed something in the residential college, which is highly related to Professor Ang's class. Students do catch bugs. They like doing that. And then during the time when Professor Ang asked them to catch bugs to submit their assignments, they actually would send one another a lot of messages. Hey, I have a bug here. Does anyone want it? I can keep it for you. And the two students that Professor Ang was mentioning just now who went to Berlin, they actually call themselves the bug ladies. They catch bugs for everyone, and they will classify them, and they will educate the rest of the community about the bugs. I think in the residential college, you actually find a great community which can integrate learning and living.
But don't worry, we don't have an infestation issue in the college.
We do have pest control. We can call those if we have to. But it's going to be sad.
Actually, just to add on, right? So Wayne also did say that at the end of a module, you have like all these like a self-guided, independent, like almost like independent study projects. So actually, I think a lot of our modules all kind of have that as well. So at the end of my module, I just tell them, okay, what are you really interested in? Are you interested in birds, plants, insects, something? And then they develop a project, and it's really, they have full volition, they have full autonomy over what they want to do. And usually it's amazing. I've had a lot of exhibitions and publications, and even like some students, their projects turn into books, and they're actually being printed out now, and people are buying them. So it's a lot of fun stuff.
That actually reminds me, we've all supervised independent study modules, independent study projects, or research projects here, including myself. Any interesting projects that you supervised recently? Because these are just, think of them as either one student or maybe a small group of them come to a professor, one of our professors, and say, hey, we're really interested to find out more about this, do a survey on that, or crunch these numbers on that, and we would love you to be able to supervise us, and you can claim modular credit, you can claim academic credits for that. It's as if you're reading one module, right? You must have supervised so many of those.
Yeah, and sort of all over the map, really. It's one of the things that I really enjoy. Students come to me with things that they think will connect with my interests in various ways, and so I've supervised things ranging from things in my field, like students who wanted to work about ancient Greece, but then I had also students asking me, can we do something about Japanese literature, about philosophy of the self? Even someone did a project about moral emotions in musicals, right? And so, I mean, it's quite fun to supervise all these different projects that in some way or another intersect with my interests, either professional interests or sort of interests I have outside the classroom.
Yeah, my own experience is quite similar, because I remember some of the projects I supervised some years ago, they're very philosophy focused, or perhaps a philosophy political theory focused. There's a student who wanted to work on the problem of dirty hands. You can Google that yourself. What on earth is the problem of dirty hands? It's actually an interesting philosophical problem. Yeah. Is it true that in order for you to do, is there a conflict between ethical intuitions and politics, such that in order to do the right thing in politics, you sometimes have to do the, in fact, individually moral? But over the years, I found myself supervising more and more, shall we say, roughly social science, social research kind of project. I'm not even sure how. I remember just 2 years ago, there were 2 students who approached me to work on a project about corporate social responsibility. They wanted to kind of figure out whether there's a way to get deeper into the phenomena, to find out whether companies are doing CSR really as a matter of responsibility, or is it more about outreach? Is it more about corporate image? Is it more about PR? And they also ran a survey about that among the students as well. And then many other research along those lines. I'm sure you guys have supervised any other.
Yeah, actually, I would like to shout out to one of my previous students. So she was deathly afraid of insects. She told me she was crying, and she in her reflection essay, she's like, I really cried a lot during and then the next she was exactly, she was really masochistic. So the next semester came back, said, can I do a study on entomophobia, the fear of insects? And it's like, wow, you really want to do that? Okay, so it was it's just concluded, and actually I actually got a few colleagues in statistics and psychology to help me look at it, and we're trying to publish it as a paper as well. So it's great stuff. She took on that fear and she turned it into something really useful. And even up to now, she still tells me, it's like, I got it. I'm even more afraid of insects now.
Well, she got a paper out of it.
Yeah.
We must have supervised so many as well.
Yeah, I think I have supervised about 10 independent studies projects. I would like to talk about one of them in particular now. 2 students who did actually the writing class with me on labor migration went on to do a project about how the migrant workers were doing in 2021 and 2020. They examined how migrant workers were impacted by COVID measures then. So they developed a very interesting project. They were science students, but they learned how to conduct interviews, how to develop a project in which they had to collect and then code qualitative data. It was actually a very fun process, but also is a process which students have to be very careful about because there are ethical concerns. So we went through the process about how to deal with those issues. And then we looked at the data together. They eventually came up with a paper which they presented in front of an audience, which included migrant workers. So I really remember that project very well. And it shows us that actually our program is really quite interdisciplinary. We can all do a lot of different things.
Yeah, what's really interesting when I deal with some of these projects is how much contribution the students can make, precisely because the group of them come from different disciplines. they bring different things to the table and they work together to make the whole project much more interesting that way, right? Yeah, I was going to ask you one interesting, funny, sad, shocking story about you, but we shouldn't scare people. You really kind of said one.
Oh yeah, a lot of crying.
What are you doing to my students, Richard?
Making them face their fears.
Okay. Anything interesting?
Is rewarding a fine category? Because I mean,
Rewarding is good.
Yeah.
Too.
I mean, a personally rewarding thing so far, right? I mean, just one from this semester. So teaching this global narratives module that I already mentioned. So one thing I found really rewarding is explaining to students, and not just explaining, but making them see what the value is of explored narrative and how much our whole life is imbued with narratives, right? I mean, our individual lives, the stories we tell ourselves, the stories we are told about the world, right? And so we did some exercises looking at point of view in fiction, right? I mean, if a story is presented, there's always a narrator, right? A point of view through which the text comes. And I asked students to think about the narrator of a particular story and then think about sort of what does it mean if we were to have a different narrator, right? And at that moment, I could see students were really getting the point that who is telling the story matters, right? And if you tell the story differently, you look at it from a different angle, that matters. And it matters not just for literature, but it matters for life, right? And I think students were really seeing it at that point, that when you see things on TV or online, I mean, it's always coming from a point of view, right? And if you kind of imaginatively consider, if we turn around that point of view, what changes, right? I mean, that's a really powerful exercise, I feel like, and it's a great way for students to see the value of studying narrative, right? Because some students inevitably come in thinking, why do I need to study literature, right? And then that moment, I think some of the skeptics maybe were beginning to see, okay, this is why we need to study literature, because everything is narrative in one way or another, right? And so for me, that was a powerful moment, seeing that happen, sort of literally seeing the lights going on and seeing that insight going down.
Fantastic. Wing?
I teach the writing foundational module, and I should also add that I used to teach in one of the predecessor programs of NUSC, and that was called USP. In that program, we have actually taught writing for a long time. So I do have to refer to that experience a little bit. The students always have had a bittersweet relationship with the writing module. It is in part really bitter because they always feel that there is a lot of work to do. They have to revise their work many times. And whenever they give the work to me, I will always be able to point out problems that they need to work on. The sweet part though, however, is that once students are done with it, they feel that they have learned a lot.
Yeah.
And so I think that this is a worth going process. Learning how to examine one's own thoughts, organize one's own thoughts. One's intellectual ability will grow immensely.
Yeah. There's in fact a question that I would love for us to talk about, and in fact, this is a great jumping point, which is, any advice when it comes to freshmen, how we can make use of our time as a student in NUS College. And in fact, you really highlighted one very important one, which is that must be ready to do work, right? Because some of the things you want to do, precisely because if they're going to be valuable, they will challenge you. Like the writing class is just one example. But if you go through it with the right attitude, you will get a lot out of it. And as testified to all these generation of students that have gone through our writing classes. Yeah, go ahead.
Could I just add in about the writing class? So I was an alumni for USP as well. I did take a writing course. It was but I think it was one of the most important modules. I took it in the first semester of the first year, and I think that really taught me how to think as a scientist, how to be critical about reading articles about what is he trying to say here? Where's this perspective that coming from? That really helped a lot with my scientific academic research career as well.
Yeah. But we're going to come back to advice for incoming freshmen later, because I really wanted to leave enough time for that towards the later part as well. So there's another question asking us about some of the other courses that are part of the required curriculum here, computational problem solving, global social thought, and science and society. Unfortunately, the representatives are not here, so I guess I have a double duty for them, right? Are you familiar with understanding the social world? Are you in connection with those guys? No.
Maybe you should do it.
So there are several other modules that unfortunately are not represented, mostly because we only have a 4-piece for other slides, so we can't be. Just kidding. But come for our open house, right? And go find the people who are teaching all these things. They're all here. They are all going to be here. I expect them to be here, right? But here, maybe I give you a little bit about these modules, right? So global social thought, we're just looking at the proposal for that recently because it's going to be implemented next semester. Is really designed to give students a bunch of very important, historically important concepts, right? They come from important thinkers from both East and West, but the more important part is that we want you to get these concepts and see that they're in fact kind of applicable to the world around us, especially to the social world around us, social phenomena. Okay, so that's the general idea of global social thought. Yes, you will be reading bits and pieces from Khaldun, from Weber, from many other thinkers. You can Zhang Xuechen, you can name. But the point is not to turn you into a historian of ideas. It's really, these are some really neat ideas that when you have time, you look around yourself, you look around the world, you look at people, then you realize, hey, wait a minute, I see more now, right? I get more now. I can see the connections now. So that's global social thought. Science and society, the people running it are like, there's a bunch of scientists, and some of them are even entomologists. You know them well, right? Philip John and then Sebastian and all the rest, right? They're all scientists, and they want to make sure that our students have a foundational literacy in the scientific method. And by this, please watch this, is the method is not about memorizing science facts, right? It's really about understanding how the method of science works. They're going to be doing experiments. I think they were collecting rainwater. I saw a bunch of students running around the other day on the field. I knew that they were doing the pilot version of this class. So they'll be doing actual experiments and field. But there's another part of the class, and it's very important to us, that it's not just about the scientific method. It's also about how the scientific method influences society and how society impinges on the practice of the scientific method, right? Because after all, scientists are people too. Okay, scientists are also people who live in society, and we are subject to funding. We have to, we work in universities and research labs and so on and so forth. And all those things can have important implications. Like for instance, there could be ethical implications of what we study, right? There could be even ethical implications of what we choose to study, not even just what we study, but what we choose to study, and so on and so forth. And of course, one last one here that was mentioned in the question is computational problem solving. It really is a kind of a foundational literacy to the world of computing as is needed for, shall we say, a university-educated citizen. Let's just put it that way, right? There are some weeks of coding. You will learn some coding, but it really is. It's not meant to be just like a coding crash course. It's really more important that you understand fundamental concepts in computing. Everything. I just saw the proposal recently again. Mikio even has things like networking, even has things like AI, and a whole bunch of other things as well, right? So watch out for the details of that. Come to open house and bug us to in fact, I'll find you the actual people who are teaching it. You can go bug them. And, sorry, no pun intended. Yeah.
Can I add something?
Yeah, please, yeah.
I can also add that from what I see, the different foundational modules work together with one another really well.
Yeah.
So for instance, when I was teaching my labor and migration writing class in the first semester, students actually were able to bring in theories that they have studied from understanding social world into my class. And likewise, now I'm teaching another writing class is on the concept of global citizenship. And there are students in my class who have done the literature class, global narratives class before. And I noticed that, wow, they know how to read. They know how to read in very great detail. So I am really grateful for their prior training.
Yeah. This actually reminds me of something that, in a sense, relate to the advice to students question again, when you said that they know how to read. I think that one of the most important attributes that will help students coming in to be successful here is coming with the understanding that none of us are as good as we can be in any of these things that we want to do. Right? We can all learn, including even things that may seem very simple and straightforward. we all come here, we all know how to count and add and subtract and divide and multiply and read and write. But really, are we that good? Right? We can all learn, right? We can all learn to be better. And this is very important with your attitude. I hope that if you have this attitude, you will thrive here because we are so going to upskill you. We're so going to, up you.
Yeah, can I add in, like, I find it very heartening whenever students actually, oh, I think you made a mistake there. And it's like, good. Or sometimes they ask me something, oh, I don't really know. I mean, can you go and find out? Okay, so that's okay. Next week, why don't you give a quick presentation on what that is? And they get that agency, they get that, they feel so much more confidence. And in the end, they see that actually we are all here to like go on a journey with you, because every time I hold my module, I do discover new things as well. And the students actually, I'm like, wow, you can do this. That's amazing. And I try to push them to have some concrete goals, like do a publication, have an exhibition, things like that.
I could also add something onto what you were saying, Loy. I mean, I'm actually in awe when I see students who kind of go through the program and they learn both on sort of the humanities and social science side, and then on the sort of quantitative side, the kind of skills that they can bring together. Because I mean, I kind of envy it actually, because I mean, I'm very much a humanities person, and I mean, I try to read widely about sort of what's happening in world politics, science, and all of that, but I don't have the skills to do, say, a computational problem-solving project, right? And then sometimes I wish I could go back and take those classes myself, honestly, and sort of.
You can.
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah, maybe I should.
Yeah, I think we kill.
Yeah.
I think we should all just go and bunk Nikhil's.
We should all take each other's classes, I think. I mean, that would be an ideal world.
Nikhil is putting together the new computational problem solving class. So if you look for it on NUS boss and all that, you won't see it because it's still in pilot.
Next week, look for the tallest guy in the room.
Oh yeah, tall Russian guy, yes. But he's actually teaching a different module this semester, which is an elective module from the same part as a mission module. It's called Deus Ex Machina. It's actually a module about generative artificial intelligence and art. And guess what? He proposed this and got it through way before ChatGPT made all the public announcements and all that. So he has been working on this for quite a while. It's a really, really interesting module. And students are learning how to use all these AI tools. He told me that he's not really expecting people to do coding per se in this module. It's really about using the tools and learning how to, think what on earth is going on with this AI. And of course, a lot of implications that are coming out of that as well. Are you guys also thinking about how to use AI in your classes? I think this is like everyone is like thinking about that right now.
So fun to make use of it. It's like kind of like a mirror. Right?
Yeah.
I've been thinking for next year Global Narratives, maybe the first poem we assign will be a poem written by ChatGPT, or maybe I'll show students a poem written by ChatGPT and then a poem written by an established poet and have them guess which is which. I mean, I haven't decided what I'm going to do, but I might play around with that.
That's so fun.
Yeah. Are you guys doing that also? Writing it, talking about it already?
Students, I do not know if students have been using ChatGPT, but after writing a few papers for me, they know what I'm looking for, and they have been working really hard. And they have been producing very original pieces of work, which I really appreciate. We have been talking about a lot of basic foundational skills that NUSC emphasizes, like computational skills, like reading skills, like writing skills.
Research.
Right. And these are all actually very important in contributing to students' academic rigor. One of the things that our graduates used to say in the past was that, well, what distinguished from a program like this is that students acquired rigor, academic rigor in their thinking, in the way that they develop their projects. And very often that kind of rigor comes from basic acquisition of skills and practicing of those skills on a day-by-day basis.
Yeah, but just to be clear about this, in case anyone gets it wrong like that, I don't actually think that we literally work our students any harder in our 4 modular credit modules compared to other 4 modular credit modules actually. But there are some important differences. One of them is we are faced with somewhat motivated students, and there are few of them in one class. So I sometimes worry that they pressure themselves a bit too much actually. We're here to really help them upskill. Right? But I don't actually think that we necessarily are trying to be hard on them. I hope that no one is I hope you guys are not doing that.
If I could add something, I mean, we've been talking a lot about skills, and of course, I mean, skills are immensely important, right? And that's, I mean, a lot of what we try to do. But I think perhaps even more than that, what we try to do is really expand students' horizons, right? And make them think, sort of get them interested into things they were not interested in before,
Yes.
right? Because yeah, I think we don't want to make it seem like we have sort of all these skills ready for you're going to learn all of them and become experts. I mean, I think one of the great takeaways with this program, I think, is also just broadening horizons and really being a sort of more well-rounded kind of student than you would otherwise be if you hadn't taken all of these courses. Yeah,
I think it's really to inculcate a sense of wonder about the world around us through biology, through literature, through writing, to analyzing any kind of thing. It's really just about having a sense of wonder, being curious about something, and then you look at it, you engage it, and then you can go so much deeper, so much further if you really want to. It's just allowing you that space to, wow, I can do this. And I think often we are all very amazed by what the students can do. It's like, oh, wow, very amazing.
Yeah. And beyond the foundational tier of modules, we do have the elective modules like the one that you just mentioned. They are, sorted into both, roughly speaking, humanities and social science type modules and also STEM science modules, because only roughly because I don't care which one you belong to, all of them have better be a little bit interdisciplinary, right? Yes, it is true that there are STEM modules that require a bit more math, and experimentation, or computation, and there are humanities sort of modules or social science modules where you need to do more writing, for instance. But nonetheless, we expect all these modules to be interdisciplinary, right? You just propose a new one, you are proposing a new one, you guys are so like, I want to do a new one myself. And these are modules where you really tackle interesting topics, right? And not just, and they're taught not just by professors who are so-called full-time with NUS College. We're always on the lookout for interesting crowds all around the campus of NUS as well, right? To find them to be joint appointment holders with us. Or for the museum, you are for the museum, right? That's right. And to offer interesting modules with us. Right? I was just talking to a prof recently from engineering. He has already proposed a new module. It's a biomedicine module actually, right? On cell engineering.
Professor Yang was talking about just now how important it was to develop in students a sense of wonder for the world. For me, well, I'm not a natural scientist. What is important for me is to develop in students a sense of care for the world, that there are people around the world that they can actually make the world a better place. And I hope that you will join us and contribute in that project.
So there is a question. We might as well answer it, because I know people always ask, can our modules be SU? What's the official answer?
You're the official.
Normal NUS SU rules apply. So there are rules about that. And within the normal NUS rules, there are certain things that you cannot SU. That's just a general set of policies, right? And many of our modules, within the general rules, yes, you can declare them so-called satisfactory, unsatisfactory after you get a grade, right? But there's a couple of very important exceptions. One of them is actually the writing module. The writing module we cannot SU. It's so foundational and so important that we don't actually allow ourselves to SU it. I think you cannot SU the impact experience project because it's a third year module, but that one is more like a general NUS policy thing, right? But pretty much everything else, yes. But my advice on that is, you come into a class just thinking that I'm going to SU it, you're not really getting a money's worth.
Maybe this is a good time to mention one of our mottos, right? Beyond grades, right? Because we very much, I mean, I know it's easy for us to say, right? Because we don't have to worry about grades any longer ourselves. But I mean, we try to encourage students to think beyond grades, take risks, right? Do something you're really interested in, even if you think you might not perform as well as you could in something where you already have the skills. Because I think that's where you'll grow, right? I mean, we're at the point where things are just difficult enough that you feel the real challenge, right?
Yeah.
Again, I know it's easy for us to say.
I just wanted to add in, like, to the students who are worried about SUing. I mean, I've not met a single student who, if they are interested, they did not do well. I mean, it doesn't matter where your level of assumed competence of knowledge and skill. It really doesn't matter to any of these modules. The moment you come in, you have that interest, you have that drive. I have not seen a single student who did not do well. Yeah. So don't think so much about SUing it. Think about like, what do I want to gain out of this? What do I want to learn from this? A lot of intangible benefits will come to you if you put interest in the module. And we will see it, even if you see that, hey, you're struggling with this concept, but if we see that you're actually really trying to take interest in it, we really, really want to help you out here.
Related to that, since the student is not asking, but I can ask on their behalf, to our modules as well. Okay, normal NUS rules apply, and normal NUS rules tells us that when a module is below a certain threshold, we don't apply the curve. And guess what? All our modules are way below that threshold, okay? So we don't apply a curve here. We do have overall guidance to make sure that we are all kind of coordinated. It will be very strange if, I don't know, maybe Bart is very generous and is giving everyone, like throwing all the A-minuses around, and then each one is really harsh. You know? Yeah, I think that would not be nice. So we coordinate, okay, a little bit. But in general, you know, yeah, I let my professors grade how they will, pretty much. I mean, within a certain limit. And, you know, students get pretty much what they work for, actually. I think that's the best way to put it. To double down on what you said, right? I think you more or less get what you work for. And that's a very important thing to know.
And it's also very important to know that our class size is really small. And what that means is that we actually are able to spend a very, very great deal of amount of time with individual students. So individual students get a lot of personal care.
And we can also track progress, right? I mean, to the earlier point, I mean, we don't just look at sort of inputs like, okay, paper 1, paper 2. I mean, we can see, I mean, in my case, I mean, if I see that a student has improved a lot from paper 1 to paper 2, I mean, that will bump up a grade for me just to see that someone is improving. And I mean, I can do that because I can track students' progress and pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Right?
When people talk about class size and all that, the way students think about it is how many people are there in each class. Actually, the more important metric for me as the vice dean is how many students is each of my professors teaching in that semester. Because that's how we guarantee that we have high quality teaching. But it's not handling more than what 40 students every semester, right? He is totally going to pay a lot of attention to each of you in his class, right? Are the NUSC courses pre-allocated, or do students choose to complete them during any semester with their 3-year stay? Okay, first and foremost, this is a 4-year program, it's not a 3-year stay. We guarantee housing for 3 years, but if you want to stay for a 4th year in a housing, you know, as long as there's space, you can do that. In fact, I suspect that pretty much everyone who wants to stay will be able to stay, but that's not something I can guarantee at the moment, right? Yes, for the elective modules, you have kind of, you know, several years for you to pick and choose how you want to do that. But we do have assumptions about how many modules you should be doing each semester to be on track, right? We don't need to be crashing all the NUS College modules in particular times. That's not very healthy. You're pursuing your majors, you're pursuing your degree as well, your main degree as well, don't forget that, right? And the foundational classes, they are foundational. So you know, I think someone asked me this morning, can I wait until like year 3 and 4 to do them? It's like, wait, then that's not foundational anymore, right? So we want to help you by giving you these foundational skills that will help you in your other things you're doing for the next 3 years, right? So yeah, so writing, global narratives, and so first 2 years. Okay,
Yeah,
so
seriously, don't take that as a chore.
Yeah.
It's so important. It is so important. It will be so much more beneficial, make things so much easier for you down the road.
And in the major as well, right? Because I mean, the courses you take here, it's not like it's just kind of an isolated part of the curriculum. I mean, whatever you learn here will help you to do better in courses in your major as well, even if you might not immediately see the connection.
Yeah. This one is for global narratives. Any recommended readings? I get these topics a lot, actually.
That's a hard one. There's so many good books out there.
Can I short circuit this?
Okay.
You should answer also, but whenever students ask me this, I usually say, hey, you should read. You should always read. But you know what? Read what you're interested in. When you come here, we like to design courses and modules in such a way that there's a lot of scaffolding, there's staging, right? Things go in a certain sequence. You're going to read this first, discuss that, then read that. There's a reason for that, okay? So we have thought through all those things to maximize your learning throughout the semester. right? You don't have to pre-prepare actually. I just want to say that, right? You don't feel as if you are especially advantage or disadvantage if you did or didn't do the so-called pre-preparation. I'm not stopping you from reading. You should always read. But read what you're interested in. Pick up a habit for reading. That preparation is going to help you a lot more than, so to speak, mugging the things beforehand. Right. But having said that, of course, read stuff from global narratives. What would you recommend to read? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this will, I mean, of course, I'm partial, right? I'm a classicist. I study very old books, right? Many of you may not have read a novel or a story or a poem that was written maybe more than a century ago, right? Or quite rarely. So I would say pick something up from a culture that is quite distant from ours and from a time period. Maybe that's the time period you've never read something before, because I think you'll often be quite surprised. I mean, I'm reading Arabian Nights right now, right? I mean, a collection of short stories from, I mean, but we know as the Middle Ages. And I mean, it's fantastic. And I find that it's so fresh and it speaks to me. And I like reading shorts, I mean, partly because of, I mean, just time to read and all that. I like reading short stories, or I read poems or short essays, something that I can digest in one sitting, right? So find something that is just something you would maybe not expect to find on sort of the front shelf of the bookstore. Nothing wrong with the front shelf of the bookstore, by the way. But, yeah. As a classicist, I have to just say, read something old.
By the way, just because it's old, it doesn't mean that it has to be in a musty bookshop, so to speak. They're all over the internet today, Kindle.
Yeah, old or different. Maybe I shouldn't just say old, different.
Yeah,
right?
That's right, different perspectives.
Yeah.
What about the two of you? Any advice on things to read beforehand? Or you're like me, don't come and trust that. He will tell you what to read.
As a biologist, I think it's always good to, I mean, primary school science, secondary school science, basic stuff. If you know what the difference between an insect and a non-insect, that's fine. I mean, that's general. But I mean, you don't really need to understand that, because when you come to, don't worry, everything's settled for you. Just really just don't worry. I would rather go with what Bart says, like go read something. Sorry, what you said, just read something you're interested in. Like, I'm trying to read the Decameron. It's like
you don't read.
I'm trying to read that. I mean, like the
naughty.
Don't read it to small children.
You don't know what the Decameron is? See whether you can Google for that.
I mean, if I could speak to this point as well, I mean, so much of what I talk about in my teaching and my advising with students now is things that I read for fun, and that somehow down the line, it might be years down the line, it comes in handy when students ask me, do you know something about this? And then, oh, actually, I listened to a podcast like 3 years ago, and here's something. So for me, there isn't really a line anymore between work reading and sort of pleasure reading. I mean, occasionally, there's some things I will never get to mention in class, but I mean, for a lot of things, I mean, the boundaries become fluid, and sort of what I think of as just something I looked at in passing. In my head, it starts connecting with other things. I mean, you never know how something will come in handy.
Someone just shared recently, because I follow a bunch of people on Twitter. There's a historian who shared, here is the Twitter links for 600 historians at one go. You can follow all 600 of them at one go. I was like, oh my goodness. Click immediately. Fantastic stuff. Someone asked about impact experience project. I think for that one, really stay for the 5 o'clock session. Ask them questions there. They are in charge of that. I don't want to answer on their behalf because they will have the more official, the correct answer. Okay, last few minutes, let's wrap up. Advice for students, right? Share any advice for incoming freshmen. How can we make use of our time as a student in NUS College? We want to go first.
Enjoy your time here. Go for it.
Yeah, can say more, it's okay. Vision?
Talk to your peers, like make sure you make a lot of friends from all different like levels of the college, talk to all the different disciplines. You know, I enjoy talking to like engineers, and then like literature person. Oh, they bring so many different perspectives in as well. There's actually a very good community here. In fact, like for my module, I just invited a whole bunch of like alumni students who've taken my module, and then they came in to help out as TAs, and they brought in an additional experience because they took my module before, and then now with their own experiences, they could share even more. So just keep on expanding. Talk to people. Don't be afraid of the prof. Don't see like we're not like like those British headmasters. No, not like that. Approach us, come talk to us. We're very friendly. We don't bite. Yeah.
I'm not even sure that there exists anymore, except in movies or something.
Yeah. So really just be, I mean, come and talk to us. I think we're all here to, I would like to say we're here to actually have fun.
Yeah. But
Yeah, I think I have two pieces of advice. I mean, the first one would be pace yourself, right? Because sometimes I see students coming in their first year and then first semester, they want to take 6 or 7 modules. I mean, for the love of God, don't do that to yourself, right? I mean, pace yourself. You will come out fine 4 years down the line, right? Even if you don't come in sort of under this very high pressure mindset. And the second one would be come in with a plan. I mean, have an idea what you want to get out of your education. I mean, personally and in terms of skills and so forth. But also have an open mind about getting new interests, right? Because I see students sometimes erring on both sides of that, right? I mean, some students come in, they know exactly what kind of career they want, and then they line up, okay, what kind of courses do I need to take to get there? And they kind of forget about everything else. And then other students come in and sort of they don't think they need a plan. They just think, okay, well, just every semester I'll just look at what courses I'll take. And I mean, that can be fine, but it's good to have a plan of saying, okay, I want to expand my interests here and here and here, because even with all the options we offer, you can't do everything, right? And having some kind of coherence among your interests and paring them down to things that you really care about, I think that will make for a more rewarding learning experience.
yeah, I really want to emphasize the point about prioritizing, right? So one very important thing you need to understand about modern higher education in Singapore is that we've come such a long way. There's so much resources. You simply cannot do everything based on offer here. And I'm not even just talking about NUS College. I'm just talking about the whole campus. There's so many things going on. You do want to prioritize, right? You do want to sleep. You want to make friends. You want to do other things, right? So please make sure you pace yourself and prioritize. Second one is, go ahead.
Just to add in, maybe a bit controversial, in terms of prioritizing, right? I think you really should ask the question, what do you want?
Yeah.
Not what your parents want, not what you think society wants. I've had conversations with at least 3 students in the past 2 semesters, and then asked them, what do you really want? And the answers they could only give me is like what they think their parents want, or what they think is good in terms of what society wants for them. So actually, what do you want? Once you have that authentic, like compass, then you really do well in whatever it is you want to do.
Yes, but nonetheless, be nice to your parents.
Yes, of course.
It can be a conversation, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
students can reflect on sort of what they want and then bring that conversation back home. And I mean, that's one thing we encourage, right? I mean, question everything, but don't stop there, right? I mean, because people sometimes think of question everything as this kind of aggressive stance where you know better, right? But question everything for me is engage in constant conversations with yourself and other people.
Yes. Yeah. It's also about being respectful to others who may not even share your interests or may even disagree with you on certain things, right? So it's part of what it means for us to be a diverse community that cares about these things. Another piece of advice I would give is you need to sort of like stay curious, of course, and pace yourself, and all that is important, but try not to overthink just the 4 years, right? You're here as a start, shall we say, of a much longer career than that. Life goes beyond the 4 years, right? There are certain things that you will feel up or down here. You may feel pressured. You may feel like your peers are doing better than you, or whatever it is. Hey, you got a whole life ahead of you. This is just a small part of it, right? Do the things that will maximize your advantage for a very long time to come. And not all of them are going to come with gold stars right now. Some of them may well be the class that you feel as if, it's the one that I got my B, but it may be that one that 15 years down the line where you say, thank goodness I took that seriously. I learned something. I stay in touch with those friends. I'm not saying that this happens all the time. And most of the time, there is a kind of a happy coincidence between the things that you do well in and the things that will be beneficial for you for a long time. But they don't always literally come together in a straightforward way. So you've got to stay open to the possibilities that are still ahead of you, way beyond your 4 years. Okay? But this is a much longer conversation. I think we're out of time. Are we out of time? Yeah, fantastic. So good to see everybody. I can't see you. So good to have you with us today. And we hope that you will join us in the open house next week and see whether you can walk around and catch these faces and ask them for more advice. Back to you guys.